So welcome to our June How to Go Solar. My name is Kate Ayers, and I am the Community Education Specialist here at Solar Oregon. Thanks for joining us. I hope you are all still staying cool after this very hot weekend that we have had here in the Portland metro area. So let's just dive right in. So today, our agenda, we're going to go over just a little bit about how solar works, what the components of solar are. We'll then talk through, is my home right for solar, and things to look at with your home when deciding to go solar. We'll then talk through the solar incentives that we're seeing. And finally, we'll close with a video of a solar story, and we'll finish with some Q&A. So first off, Solar Oregon is a nonprofit that has been within the Portland area for over 40 years now. We are focused on education, outreach, community, and advocacy around mostly solar energy, but also renewable energy projects here in Oregon. We have a few programs that we offer. Our biggest program is our How to Go Solar, which you are at here today. We also do 2 solar tours throughout the year, which are coming up soon. We do have tickets available for both of them. So first off, in August, we have our solar winery tour, which we will be doing a hybrid event this year of in-person and also virtual. Please look for tickets for that. And then in October, we will be doing our Go Zero tour, which features net zero or close to net zero homes around Oregon. We also offer Solarize campaigns in partnership with Energy Trust of Oregon, which is an awesome way for a whole community to go solar at once. And then finally, all of our programming and the work that we are doing is really focused on peer-to-peer education and the importance of storytelling to spread the clean energy movement. If you're interested in supporting our work, you can become a member on our website, solaroregon.org. We are a member-funded organization. If you are already a member joining on, thank you so much for your support. We also do appreciate any donations that you're interested in giving, and you can donate at the bit.ly/solardonate link. And finally, before we get started, I'd just like to thank our main sponsor for this event, the Energy Trust of Oregon. So I'm sure that most of us are very used to using Zoom now during this COVID year that we have faced, but just a couple quick things to go over. We do have a Q&A button on this Zoom. We will be doing a Q&A, as I mentioned, at the very end of this event. So if you have any questions that pop up throughout the duration of this presentation, please put them in the Q&A box and we will answer them all at the end. And before we get into the main presentation, I just want to do a couple polls. So if you are joining us via video, you should have just received a poll just asking where you're tuning in from today. This just helps us kind of gauge where our audience is from, how we can do more outreach across the state, and just helps us better our programming. So thank you to those who are already filling out this poll. There's a couple more that we will be going through very quickly. Today, it looks like we have Portland and the Willamette Valley. So thank you so much for joining us. The second one is also to help us kind of grow our programming. I will say this poll is completely anonymous, so we will not have a name attached to any of this information. But again, this demographics poll, which is a bit longer, if you're willing to, really helps us out to see the group of people that we're reaching and where we can do more outreach and really just be able to grow this program to service more Oregonians across the state. Thank you to those who are filling this out. I will give a little bit more time on this one just because I know that it asks quite a few more questions than the last one. Great. I will be shutting this off in just a second. Again, thank you so much to those who have filled these out. They really are super helpful for us here at Solar Oregon. And so I will close this poll and launch our very last one, which is just to gauge what level of familiarity you all have with solar energy coming into this presentation today. So have you heard of solar before? Have you already spoken to an installer and started that solar process? Or do you already have solar installed? Or are you very new to the solar journey? Great, thank you so much to those who are filling this out. Super helpful information. It's looking like most of those who are joining us today have some level of familiarity with solar. And we also have someone who has already spoken to an installer, which is awesome to hear. Great, so we are gonna move into the bulk of this presentation now and start with how does solar work? So here we can see the basic system components of a solar system. So up on that top left, we have the photovoltaic or solar panel that is installed on your roof or near your roof. And then the sunlight hits that and creates electricity. That electricity moves into an inverter or microinverter, which I will talk a little bit more about later. And what that does is make sure that the electricity that comes in is converted through that inverter or microinverter so it can then go into your home and be used. So then it goes to your home electrical panel so that you're able to use that energy, and through a brand new utility meter that will be installed, which is a dual utility meter, which will allow you to see how much energy you're pushing out to the grid and how much energy you're bringing in from the grid. And then that energy will be pushed out into the utility grid. So as I mentioned, there are two types of inverters. We have an inverter, so that white box on the far left-hand side of the screen, which sits next to your electrical panel. Or the other option is microinverters, which are just small boxes that are placed underneath each panel or every other panel. Both do the same exact thing, which is just converting that electricity to make it usable. And both are really great options. Your solar installer will be able to pick out which one will work best for your system and help with that process. So the other thing that I briefly mentioned was mounting options. So there are two main mounting options when deciding to go solar. The first, and probably the one that we are most used to, or that is most common, is a roof mount. So just placing those panels right on top of your roof. This saves a lot of space and usually is one of the easier things for a homeowner living in the suburbs or a city setting. The other option is ground mount. So if you have a little bit more space and you're interested in having your system a little bit further away from your house, you can set it up to be ground mounted. The one thing to note here is that you do have to trench the wiring to be able to connect those ground mounted panels to a system connected to your home or barn or whatever is nearby. And so that trenching cost can be a little bit of an extra cost there, but both are really great options depending on what works best for your situation. So next we're going to jump into, is my home right for solar? So the first thing to look at here is really system size. So how many panels you want really is based on how much electricity your home is consuming. So typically we see that the average system size is about 6 kilowatts. And this is really dependent on, as I said, how much electricity you're consuming, but also the available space on your roof, the budget that you have, or if you have any specific things that you're interested in looking at around aesthetics of what your system looks like. One thing that we do want to just mention is the fact that you don't necessarily want a system that is a whole lot larger than what you're consuming, because your net metering credits for your system are not going to roll over year to year. And so it's not super beneficial to have a huge system that's producing a lot more electricity than you're using. So another thing to look at is just your solar access. So where is the sun facing? Where on your roof. So here in the Northern Hemisphere, the best roof access is south, just because southern exposure, we see sun all day long. But east and west facing roofs are still really great options. Northern facing roofs are usually not used for solar, as you're not getting as much sun access. So the other thing to look at is roofing materials. So the two main ones are asphalt shingle and standing seam metal. Both are really great options. It just kind of depends on how they are installing the system. So on that asphalt shingle, you will have a metal flashing that is attached to the roof and then has a metal pole that runs across that the solar panels attached to. The standing seam metal can also have that, or there are pieces that will be able to attach the panels right to those metal seams there of that roof. One thing that you do need to take into consideration when it comes to your roof is just your roof condition and age. I'm sure it's pretty known, but usually newer roofs are a lot better for installing solar. One reason for that is because energy trust incentives do require 10 years or more of roof life to receive those incentives. But also the other thing is that if you install the panels, they do have to be uninstalled for a new roof to be placed onto your home, and then the panels will have to be reinstalled. Typically that process, if you do install panels and then down the road you need your roof re-roofed, typically it's a really easy process. Your contractor will be able to uninstall and reinstall, and usually they have great contacts to help with that re-roofing as well. The last piece to think about is just roof structure. And that is really, it just depends on if you have trusses versus rafters, and there could be some just need to reinforce your systems, but your installer will be able to help with that, and neither causes much issue or concern when it comes to solar. You just may need to put in place some pieces to help support, depending on your roof structure. So moving right along, another thing that we want to talk about today are solar incentives. And I'm sure we are all interested in how we can save money to install solar. So one of the main pieces with this is that since the start of solar, we have been seeing the national trends of how much it costs decreasing every year, which is awesome. And one of the reasons for that is because of this first incentive, which is the investment tax credit, or the federal incentive that we have. The other incentives that we have here in Oregon are the solar plus storage rebate and the energy trust incentives that are available. So with these incentives, we see that the ITC, or that federal tax credit, is 26% of the system cost. It is super exciting, and it has been renewed at that 26% for a couple more years, which is great. The solar plus storage rebate just got more funding pushed through the end of this legislative session. So there is $10 million that has been passed for this incentive, which is up to $5,000 for your system. And that is solar with the addition of storage or a battery on top of that system. And then the final one is the energy trust incentive, which is up to $2.8 thousand. Two things to note with these incentives. Energy trust, you must be within PGE or Pacific Power territory to receive those incentives. And then with our federal investment tax credit, or the ITC, you do need to have tax liability to be able to take advantage of that incentive. And one other program that I want to touch on is the Solar Within Reach program. it is an energy trust program for low to middle income, and you can receive up to $9,000 per home depending on your utility. And unfortunately, I put the wrong slide in here. This family of four income threshold is actually about $90,000 or so. And so if you fall underneath that, you can take advantage of this program. There is also more information on their website about those income thresholds for other family sizes. So the next thing that I briefly wanted to go through was a sample budget of a project. So this is based on kind of that average system I mentioned, which is 6 kilowatts. We have put in the eligible project cost at about $20,000. So if we look at that energy trust incentive of about potentially $1,800, depending on where you live and what utility you're using, that would drop that cost to $18,200. The Oregon rebate, as we said, it just got reinstated, which is awesome. So there is more funding available now for that. And so that would even drop that system cost even more if you're able to take advantage of that. I will mention that though that incentive does go pretty quickly. So if you're interested in getting that rebate, I would reach out to a contractor and start that process pretty soon. So as we see, the out-of-pocket cost to customer, it says here 18,200. It could be as low as about 14,200 depending on that rebate. And then you can take advantage after your system has been installed of that federal tax credit. So you could see your final cost of about between $9,000 to $13,000 for that system. So one thing that I wanted to briefly touch on that we didn't touch on earlier is net metering, which I did mention slightly. So one of the awesome things about solar is that your contractor will put in that dual meter that I was talking about, and that will track your net metering credits. So net metering credits are basically in the summer months when here in Oregon we see a lot more sun and your solar is producing more energy, then usually it's producing more energy than we are consuming. That extra energy that is pushed out into the grid, you will receive net metering credits for. And then in those winter months, when we are consuming more energy than we are using, since we typically see a lot less sun, you're able to use those credits to cover the cost of that electricity. As I mentioned earlier, there is a timeline for this. So it goes on a yearly basis of, I believe, it's every March or so. And so the credits that you have don't roll over to that next year. So you want to use those credits within that year period. So as I mentioned, not necessarily super useful to have a system that is a lot larger than what you are consuming in a yearly basis. So now that we've talked through all of that, how do you get started in beginning your solar journey? So the first place that we suggest that you start and look at is to go over to the Energy Trust website and to look at their trade allies. So these trade allies are contractors that have been approved through the Energy Trust system. They are rigorously vetted and they are familiar with all of Energy Trust's installation requirements and all of the information needed to take advantage of those Energy Trust incentives. So when you go over there, you will be able to request a quote. So you will fill out a short survey of your home and your system that looks similar to this on the right-hand side of the page. And once you send that in, you will receive bids from multiple different companies. And they'll start the process with you, let you know kind of what they think it would cost for your particular system. And then you can decide which installer is going to work best for your budget and for what you're looking for. So once you've selected your installer, then your contractor will complete all of the necessary paperwork for you. Once you can get scheduled, installation usually takes just about 1 to 2 days. Of course, this depends on your system size and how large your system is, but for that average system size, it's about 1 to 2 days. The other awesome thing is that your contractor will manage all of the inspections. They will set up your net metering for you. The one thing that you are responsible for in this process is to take advantage of that federal tax credit that is on you. Your installer will not be able to help you with that process. And so after that, your system will be fully installed and you will be able to start using the energy coming from your solar system. So the next thing that I wanted to share before we go into the Q&A portion is just a solar story from one of our volunteers who and individuals who was on our last Go Zero tour. So this is John Greiser's solar story, who talks about an ADU that he has built that utilizes solar. And so I will play this video for us.
1 hour of sunlight falling on this earth powers the world for a year. Solar is the fastest growing segment of the largest industry in the world, and it's undeniably the future. My name's John Greiser. I'm the owner of Elemental Energy. We're a local solar install company, and for the past 10 years, I've had the pleasure of spending my days putting solar on everyone else's house, and finally, here's my opportunity to put solar on my own house. I worked on this for the past 6 years. I bought the property, vacant lot here in Coley, Northeast Portland. This house that we're looking at today is eventually going to become the ADU. Over on the north side of the property over there, we saved a bunch of space to put the main house. That's kind of a 2-3-year plan. I guess there was a hashtag for this house, the hashtag small house, big solar. So it's 570 square feet, but it has 10 kilowatts of PV on it. And what's unique about these modules is that they are bifacial. The cell that's used on this module is capable of converting sunlight into electricity, no matter what side the sunlight hits. The system has a 25-year warranty, so it's going to be guaranteed to produce at least 25 years. You're going to pay more money for 25 years of electricity than if you bought solar today and installed it. But that's a hurdle. That is absolutely a hurdle for many people. That is the one hurdle, is getting over that. But if you can clear that hurdle, it will be a good economic decision. So, and there's a lot of good drivers for reducing that cost. There's a federal tax credit of 26%. A quarter of your entire cost of that system is instantly returned to you. So over the course of the year, this produces way more than it consumes. I turned the system on in March, and I think I produce 4.5 times as much energy as I consume. I don't have an electric car now, but I think every house should come with an EV charger. If I were to come up with a tagline for this house, it's 100% solar powered, off-grid capable with a hot tub. To live 100% solar powered, to live off-grid, a lot of times people will think candle lights or conservation or sweaters in the winter, definitely not hot tubs. But I wanted to show that that can be done. So 2 Tesla Powerwall home battery systems. Each one of these is 14 kilowatt hours of energy storage. As I like to call it, this is basically my on-grid or off-grid switch. So if I were to flip this right now, which I'll just do for the remainder of the tour, I am off-grid, so everything in the house is running off of Powerwalls and solar. So everything's off. Very proud of this. Basically, this says that this home will use 0 energy from sources that it does not offset itself. So yeah, welcome inside. So everything's working. The fan just turned on. The lights are on. So we are operating fully off-grid right now. All the electricity we'll use on this tour. It's a 100% electric house, ductless mini split heat system. There's a tankless electric hot water heater, also a radiant floor heating system. I did finished concrete floors. I ran hydronic radiant loops through the floor. We through the switch and disconnect it from the grid. And when you're doing that, so the Tesla system thinks that there's a power outage. So when it does that, you get a notification on your phone. And right here you can say, John's house, Powerwall is 98% charged and providing power to your home. Get a lot of energy efficiency measures with the 3 inches of closed cell foam in the ceiling, the rest of that cavity, plus the walls with dense pack blown-in insulation. 18-inch dishwasher and 24-inch microwave range and refrigerator. Everything's Energy Star. It's a nice compact kitchen. But this is the small kind of utility room that we have here. Now we're at the kind of the end of the tour. 570 square feet later, we're here at the side door. So I started Elemental Energy as my senior project in college. We started off on this path of just having this company as a way to get a senior project done. And I graduated. I got a job at Solar World. What I was doing in that laboratory, it wasn't make or break for whether solar was going to be adopted at a wide scale. What was going to make that shift happen was getting out there and telling the world that solar works. That's what we've been doing for 10 years. We work on residential and commercial and off-grid and you name it. You know, the sun falls on every corner of this earth. It is the one true, infinite, and renewable resource that is replenishing what we have on this earth every single day. And it's accessible to everyone on earth. So how could you not move towards that future with everything you had in you?
Great. So that is the presentation that we
1
have.
hour of sunlight falling on this earth powers the world for.
Sorry about that. So that is the presentation that we have for you today. I am happy to answer any questions that have come up for anyone. I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A yet, but please feel free to put any questions that you have in there, and I can start answering them. Really appreciate you joining on to this presentation. I hope that you learned something, and if there aren't any questions coming through, which I'm not seeing any yet, but I will give it a couple minutes. Thank you all so much and continue to stay cool and safe. Great, so I see one question from Alice here in the Q&A who asks specifically what criteria make a site suitable for solar. I mean, as we kind of mentioned, a south-facing roof is ideal, but west and east are also really great. Being able to have that sun exposure, so not having too much blockage from trees is great. Also, those are the main ones that come to mind. But when you are able to talk to a solar installer, what they will do is be able to look at your home, usually over Google Maps, or they'll send somebody out to do they'll look at it over Google Maps, and then they'll send somebody out to look at your home and be able to look specifically at the system, what your setup looks like, and be able to tell you exactly the pieces that are great for your home and things that could be an issue there for installing that solar system. I have another question here from Greg that asks, can you get incentives for ground installed solar before the house is built? Greg, that is a great question, and unfortunately, I'm not completely sure about that, if you're able to receive any incentives before your home is built. I believe that you're able to apply for some of the incentives during the building process of your home, but I am unsure if it's possible before construction has really started. You could potentially, I would encourage you to reach out to solar installers and ask them that question to see if anyone is able to start that incentive process. I think one barrier to that that could arise is how big that home is going to be and what that system size would look like. You can understand that through house plans. So if you have house drops and everything, that is possible. But not sure if you've started that process yet or not. But I would encourage you to reach out to some installers in your local area. I have another question from Alice, who asks, we were once turned down for solar because the site we were considering had 42% when 45% was needed. Has that changed? What does the percentage refer to? Alice, that's a great question. I am unsure if that percentage has changed any. I am assuming here, but it sounds like that percentage is referring to the percentage of sunlight that you are receiving, and that is probably looking at sun exposure over the course of a year rather than just on sunnier days. I would encourage you to use that Trade Ally link that was put in the chat to request a bid and to talk to a few different installers. I know that some people have had better luck when they reach out to multiple different installers to see what that would look like from multiple different perspectives. If there are any other questions, please feel free to put those into the chat. Greg asked another question in here. Can installers help with sizing a system for off-grid? Yes, Greg. Many installers, I would say most installers, are very well versed in off-grid systems. The only thing to note there is that some incentives will not be available for off-grid systems. So the energy trust incentives require you to be tied to the grid. But many installers I know are very well versed in off-grid systems and agricultural systems that are not tied to the grid. And so they are very much able to help you answer any questions that you have about sizing for an off-grid system or what that process looks like and how to get started on that. And I will just point out that Pramod, my colleague, has put in an article that explains that percentage link for you, Alice, if you have not seen that yet. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes if anybody else has any more questions. But again, just want to thank you all for joining us today on this warm day. I hope you're all staying cool and staying safe. And thank you again. Really appreciate you tuning in. I am not seeing any more questions, so we are going to log off today, and I hope you all are able to enjoy your afternoon. Thank you very much. Bye.